Hello, friends. Welcome back to our next episode of SNEP Speaks. As SNEP, we keep helping the special need children families for bettering their financial future and also transferring their legacy to the next generation, especially taking care of the special children. In our first episode, we have started the discussion about the estate planning, which is the most important activity. Today, we are going to take the discussion further and we are going to dwell into the aspect of different tools which are available to do the effective estate planning. One of such tool is writing a will. Now, will is a legal document and it is a very important document. We will understand with our founder, Mr. Jitendra Solanki, who is here today to guide us. What is the importance? What are the difficulties people face if they don't write a will? And all other aspects we are going to discuss. So stay tuned and let us dwell into the subject. Welcome, Jitendra.
Hi Shilpa.
See, the first question, people always feel that I have done the nominations, I have done everything, I have written down somewhere. Okay. Is it really required for me to create a will? And what happens if a person unfortunately dies without writing a will?
Yes, that's in fact a very important question, and there is a lot of still confusion regarding writing a will or not writing a will. Because I have met few families came across, and the perception was that even if I don't write a will, after me everything goes to my wife. Okay. Now all these issues comes because we do not know the legalities around writing a will or not writing a will. And let's understand that nobody goes deep into understanding these legalities. It's very difficult unless and until you have met a lawyer or an estate planner. So let's talk about what if you do not write a will. Okay. See, why a will is written. A will is written because you want to distribute your wealth to your next generation, to legal heirs as per your wish. Now, in India, if everything related to distribution of your assets to your next generation or legal heirs is covered under Succession Act. Now, the Succession Act defined that how your assets are going to be distributed. So they have created layers of legal hires like class 1 legal hires, class 2 legal hires. So there is a list of class 1 legal hires. There is a list of class 2 legal hires and going beyond that. Now, if you do not write a will, then simply every part of your asset of your wealth gets distributed as per the Succession Act. And the Succession Act says that whoever are your legal heirs, all your wealth is going to be distributed equally between them. So if you do not write a will, and if you say have 10 rupees, if you have 5 legal heirs, so each legal heir will receive 2 rupees. So it is equally distributed between all your legal heirs when you do not write a will. Okay, so that's how the
Okay.
succession law is placed, and that's what happens. And that's the biggest challenge, I would say, for special children families, because Succession Act doesn't speaks anything about special needs. It doesn't speaks about giving some legal hires more or less. It simply says that these are your legal hires. All your assets are going to be distributed equally between them.
So the biggest hurdle in not writing a will is, as the name says, it's will. It is the wish of the person who is owning the property, and he should be having the power to distribute it as per his wish. And if it is not written down, then it is left to the legalities, and the law will take over and distribute it accordingly, which may not be as per your wish. And so, will is the most important document. So let's go ahead, and we have accepted that yes, one has to write some estate planning tool, and will is something which is much more easier to be done. So one has to write it. So can you please help us understand how to write a will? Is it that we have to appoint a lawyer to write a will? Can we do it ourselves? We have heard about the witnesses, and a doctor has to be there. So, can you just help us understand what is the way of writing a good will?
That's a very important question. Now, as we have spoken earlier, that what happens when you do not write a will. Now, when you have a special need child, it will be there that you might have to allocate more for your special need child, right? Because his lifetime care, you require more money. Now, this can happen only when you have a will. This doesn't happen in the succession act, and that's why for special children families will writing is very very important. Plus there are legalities around, claiming those assets when you do not have a will. It is a long tedious legal process, so to avoid that you write a will. Now what happens when you write a will? First of all, will written on a plain paper, even in your handwriting, signed by two witnesses, is a very well legally valid will. There is no legal foundation that it has to be typed. There is no legal foundation that it has to be through a lawyer or through any professional. Even as an individual, if I write my own will and get it signed by two witnesses, that's a legally valid will in India. So that's clear out the confusion that you have to go and meet a lawyer only. Today, when you think of that, I have to write a will, just get down and write your will. Now, how do you start writing a will and what you should cover? First of all, you should have inventory of your assets and liabilities. The wealth you have accumulated, which you want to distribute to your next generation, and which you want that your spouse is also going to be utilized from that for her living care. So you create an inventory of your assets and liabilities. You demarcate from these assets how your liabilities are going to be repaid, and then from the assets, from the wealth you have accumulated, which assets is going to be utilized for your spouse for her living, and what are the assets which are going to be utilized for your special need child lifetime care. Once you have demarcated that very clearly, okay, that means your inventory is prepared. Now your thought process is very clear that how these assets are going to be utilized. Then you get down in writing a will. Uh, Also, when you are writing a will, so the most important element which you will have to cover, apart from the asset which you have to distribute, the most important element which you will have to cover is the legal guardianship. As a parent, you are taking all decisions on behalf of your child. But after your lifetime, who's going to be the next person who will become the legal guardian and who will take all those decisions? This, as a parent, you write down in your will and appoint a person who is going to become the next legal guardian. That's very, very important, because if you leave this element behind, then as a special need child, if he or she is not able to take his decision, somebody wants to take decision on the child behalf, he or she can only do when he have got the legal guardianship. Without legal guardianship, they can't do. And identifying that person is a parent's responsibility, because as a parent I am taking the complete responsibility of my child till I am there, but I need to identify somebody who is going to be the next person, and that appointment you write down in the will, that these are the people, or this is the person who is going to become the next legal guardian. So in a will you have so when you are writing a will, first you write down about that you haven't written a will before and this is the last will. Second, you are going to write down about your child, that you have got a special need child, he needs support, and that's why you are bequeathing these assets to him. So you're going to write down very clearly. Then you will write down the distribution of your assets, that these are how my liabilities are going to be repaid, and this is how my assets are going to be distributed, or who will bequeath those assets after my lifetime. So if you have two bank accounts, one bank account you say is going to be bequeathed to my wife, and one bank account is going to be utilized for my son lifetime care. So that's how you're going to write down in the will. So you're going to write down the demarcation very clearly. Next, the appointment of the legal guardian. So you're going to write down that this is the person who is going to be the next legal guardian after our lifetime. Okay, so one is that. Then you have an executor. So you write down in your will that who is going to execute this will, who's going to be the person who's going to involved in the execution of this will. I am not going into legalities that if you don't have executor, how does it happen? But executor is a person, for simplicity, that who's going to manage all the execution, all the distribution of your wealth. He will ensure that the all penny of your wealth which you have accumulated is being transferred to the person, to the institution you have demarcated in the will. So that's that's an executor. Also, if your will goes for a probate in the court for any reason, then the executor is the person who's going to manage the entire probate process. So executor becomes very, very important. And lastly, you will have two witnesses who's going to sign your will in your presence. So this is how a will is going to be written. And these are what the elements are going to be covered. Beyond that, as a parent, solve family dynamics, you might have certain requirement. You can write down very clearly in the will. So if you have other family members, you want to give it to some of the wealth to any charitable organization, that you're going to write down very clearly in the will. Also, if you want a trust also to be created through will, you're going to write down the provision of the trust creation. So whichever provision you want, the manner you want these assets should be utilized, you're going to write down very clearly in the will. So for your special need child, if you have demarcated asset, how these assets should be utilized, in what manner, in you want to put certain conditions, you are going to write down in the will very, very clearly, so that when the will gets executed, it's very clear how you wanted these assets should be utilized.
Okay, so once the wheel is created, just one question is like many people feel that a doctor's certificate is required to show that the person writing the will is in sound mind. So is it required? And second question is, do we have to mandatorily register the will?
Okay, so doctor certificate is not mandatory, but sometimes it is advisable, especially when you are at a higher age. So doctor certificate is basically you avail where the doctor certifies that when you are writing a will, you are in a sound mind. Okay, I always take example of Bollywood movies, that when a will used to get contested, what was the first thing which they used to contest? That the person was not in sound mind. Okay,
Hmm.
so and these are the challenges you face when a will goes for a dispute. So to avoid that, a doctor certificate would help if you have attached to a will. So a doctor certifies that when you have written a will, you are in a sound mind. So it is advisable, especially people who are already, beyond 50 years of age, 60 years of age, when they are writing a will, that to attach a doctor certificate, it will just give authenticity of you creating this will. And the next question is registration. See, as per Indian laws, registration of a will is not mandatory. As I spoke earlier, even a will written on a plain paper in your own handwriting, signed by two witnesses, is a legally valid will, and it is accepted by all the institutions. Registration, it's helpful to avoid certain situations, like if your will is registered, so it is registered and the copy is with sub registrar office, so nobody can tamper with that will. If you have to make changes in the will, you can make it through a document called codicil, right? Or you can rewrite the will. Now, because will is registration is not mandatory, so even if you have registered a will and after that you write a will and you do not get it registered, then that is going to be accepted as the last will. So in a will, whichever is the last will written by you, registered or unregistered, is accepted as the last will of your lifetime. Okay, so registration is not mandatory at all, but it is advisable. It helps in certain situations.
So in this episode, we'll stop here. There is another tool called trust, which we will cover in the next episode, which is also again very important for another way of doing the wealth distribution to the next generation. So we will come back with the next episode on trust and how to form it in a short time. So thank you so much, Jitendra, for your valuable inputs.
Thank you, Shilpa.